right, and welcome to Fast Break Breakfast, NBA podcast. My name is Keith, here alone for a solo interview episode. The full episode with John and Chuck should be out later this week, I assume on the regular day on Thursday afternoon. Today's episode talking a bit about the Bulls fiasco, which is still going on as they lost their game on Monday night. So apparently some of the Kings players, or a Kings player, mocked them by yelling, yes, another 2.5 hour practice is coming up. Just delicious stuff. It's my favorite story. Talk a little bit about the Bulls. Talk about the Spurs, their kind of weird season so far, what they should do about the Miami Heat, some other stuff. A little bit about the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies just lost, again, as I'm talking right now, to the Denver Nuggets. Marc Gasol had his fifth straight pretty terrible game. Mike Conley left the game, was worried his foot was going to be hurting, which isn't great. But the Nuggets held on. It was much easier for the Grizzlies to beat the Nuggets the first time around when Jokic refused to shoot. I also got back from Memphis over the weekend. I drove to Memphis with a buddy to go see LeBron James and the Lakers, and that game was also disheartening as the Grizzlies, after winning a couple of really nice back-to-back games against the Pelicans and Clippers, completely got trucked by LeBron James. And it is, I gotta say, it is surreal seeing LeBron James in real life. Like, I go to NBA things and I see the Grizzlies play a lot. I see the NBA players, at a few events, and you're like, all right, that's cool, it's awesome, that's that famous player. But just seeing LeBron James, he's just a transcendent superstar. It feels a little different. It's exciting. It's so exciting when you see him. And he brought it. He just, casually, without breaking a sweat, eviscerated the Grizzlies. Ugly stuff. But anyway, we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, with John and Chuck. If you want to support our show, if you want to buy some gifts for people, we have T-shirts over at teepublic.com/user/fastbreakbreakfast. That's teepublic.com/user/fastbreakbreakfast. You have a couple days to order over there and get it delivered by Christmas. You can still get a shirt delivered by Christmas if you want to buy the Tibbs ice cream disturbing design by our boy Monte World Peace, or if you want the new Boban shirts that are completely awesome, or if you want to buy them for a good friend, surprise an NBA fan with some Boban. It could be a coffee mug. They'll print it on anything. That's the fun stuff. A sticker, a coffee mug, anything. All the stuff right now is 30% off, and you have, I think, 2 days to buy that to guarantee delivery by Christmas. So if you want to support our show and get some fun NBA art, maybe a new iPhone case or whatever with some of our designs on it, our logo, the Phil Jackson How's It Goink shirt, or the Boban stuff, whatever you want, all that is found at teepublic.com/user/fastbreakbreakfast. Also, if you're shopping for tickets in the holiday season for any kind of event, music, comedy, NBA, NFL, NHL, you're probably going to head over to SeatGeek.com, and they're going to show you all the best deals. They're going to collate all the other ticket sites to let you know what you need to buy. And our listeners get $20 off their first purchase if you use our code FASTBREAKBREAK, just like my Twitter handle, FASTBREAKBREAK. You use that code, you get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase, which, if you're going to a Memphis Grizzlies game, can be a lot of that ticket price. So treat yourself this holiday season. Buy some T-shirts over at TeePublic. Buy some tickets using our code FASTBREAKBREAK at SeatGeek.com. All right, now let's ask Mike Pina if NBA players today are soft. My guest today is a writer who covers the NBA for Vice Sports and is a first-time guest on Fast Break Breakfast, Mike Pina. Mike, how are you?
I am great, Keith. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for coming on. I don't know if you're aware, but we always start off talking about breakfast. So I don't know if you've had a good breakfast today or maybe a good breakfast recently, but can you regale me with any breakfast tales?
So I'm not a huge breakfast person, but every day I usually have the same thing. So I got a Vitamix blender. And what I do is usually the night before I throw like 4 or 5 bananas in there with some frozen fruit and some spinach. And I make a big smoothie. And then I wake up and I have a cup of coffee and have a cup of my smoothie. And that's basically my breakfast every day.
My mouth has been agape since 4 or 5 bananas. Is that... I'm sorry. Does that last you for the week? Is that just the morning? Like
that's that's like 2 days worth of smoothie.
Okay. That's
I probably should have said that. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. You were like, I'm not a big breakfast guy, but every morning 4 or 5 bananas. I was like, what in the?
I have 17 pancakes. No.
I was like, you're like Arnold Schwarzenegger at the I think the start of End of Days. I think that's how that movie starts. He's making a smoothie like that.
That's my influence right there.
That's pretty good. I don't know you real well. What's your NBA background? Like, what was your fandom, or how did you get into being an NBA fan?
So I grew up in right outside Boston, Massachusetts.
Heard of it?
Yep. And so I grew up a Celtics fan. When I was a child, the team was really bad. So my favorite player growing up was David Robinson, actually. So I still have to this day at my parents' house like 500 David Robinson basketball cards, and he's still amazing. But so yeah, I grew up a Celtics fan. And, I cover the league. This is my job, but I still have, I'm still happy when the Celtics win and kind of sad when they lose. So I try to stay as objective as possible, but sometimes my fandom bleeds into my viewership a little bit more than it probably should, but I can't turn off my emotions. So that's what it is. So that's basically a background on kind of how I came to love the NBA and which teams I rooted for.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I feel like everyone tries to be like, well, I'm a journalist now, so I don't have a favorite team. And I'm like, come on, man. It seems like you cheer for somebody.
That's what I say to my fellow journalists.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't even believe it. I make fun of some of them a few times here and there when they I knew the teams that they used to root for, and
right.
when that team wins or loses, I kind of poke fun, and I know that deep down it hurts them. But
do you have any affinity still for the Spurs with that long-standing David Robinson love, or was that just a single player thing?
I mean, I respect the hell out of the Spurs, and I've always enjoyed watching them play, and so and just kind of as like a small market team, I really liked their I admired their long, successful run of 20 years that appears to sadly be over. And I would say right now, actually, just picking favorites, like Kawhi Leonard has been my favorite player in the league for a few years now. So it was kind of sad to see him leave the San Antonio Spurs. I thought he would spend his whole career there.
Yeah, it's too bad. Too bad he wasn't more of a leader. He might have had a longer career in San Antonio.
Shucks. Yeah, shucks.
Well, you actually recently wrote on Vice that you thought that the Spurs should blow it up. So you think this is really was that a legit hard take, or were you pushing it? Like, you don't trust Popovich and this system and the culture that they have there to maybe ride out this rocky start?
So I'll push back just a little bit on the phrase blow up. Okay. I wrote that they might want to tank this year.
Oh, okay.
So,
I got you. That is different.
Yeah. So, you look at the roster and they have LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan and all these other kind of role player pieces. And, if you were to blow it up, you would look to trade LA, and you would look to trade DeRozan and get really bad and try to be basically the worst team in the entire NBA. And I don't necessarily think that that's the route that they should go down, because, DeJounte Murray, who is another one of my favorites, his torn ACL was such a devastating blow to that team. And if I were the Spurs, I would be very interested in seeing, next season what they would look like with a healthy Aldridge, healthy Murray, and DeMar DeRozan. And so, a lot of people can look at that and say they still won't have enough shooting, but I mean, the defense is just, it's atrocious. And I think having Murray, who was an all defensive team, caliber player last year, having him back would definitely help. They don't really have any point guards capable of running offense, let alone defending at the point of attack either. So I think he would help there. I think Lonnie Walker would help. And then you have, I don't necessarily think, even if they did not make any moves to get better or worse, I don't necessarily think that the Spurs are going to make the playoffs this year. That's not necessarily an indictment on them, but more so just how competitive the Western Conference is. So, then they would also have a lottery pick, which they have not been able to enjoy and develop for years because, they're so good. So, I mean, it's possible that they turn this around or maybe even, they had a couple nice wins over the weekend. I'm just not confident in their offense in today's league. I don't think they can score with some of the better teams, let alone, some of the more mediocre teams. And defensively, which is where they really hang their hat, they're not getting back on defense like they used to. They're not defensive rebounding like they used to. They don't really have the size or the rim protection that they've always had. So it's tricky. I don't think that they're a playoff team.
Well,
so
if you wanted to tank it out without blowing it up, are you just saying like we're not going to play LaMarcus Aldridge anymore, or we're going to give?
No, yeah. So I mean,
hey, just take it easy. Like don't worry about it.
I think there are players that you would put on the trade market. Rudy Gay, who is an expiring contract, he's been up and down for them this year, but I think that he could get something maybe. If a contender out there. Well, he's on a. I know. What is your fandom?
Oh, I'm a Grizzlies fan.
So you have a history with Rudy Gay.
I have a history with like a third of the Spurs roster.
Yes, that is true.
It's kind of funny. The Spurs got rid of all guys I was happy to see leave the Grizzlies. That was like the common bond. So then I've had this long, my Grizzlies fandom. I've feared the Spurs for a decade. Like they were just unstoppable, and they just, no matter how good of a season the Grizzlies were having, it was like, but we're going to get torn up by the Spurs. And so now, like the last couple of years, when Pop and RC Buford have been signing these guys who I thought stunk, I was like, oh, maybe they know something. Maybe Dante Cunningham actually good. Like maybe Quincy Pondexter's ready to play again, ready to have a role, but then not so much. It's actually kind of broken. And this season of I think they've crawled up to like 28th in defense now that after the weekend. But like this season of them being kind of not very good, it's like broken the aura of. I thought there was a system. I thought these players were good because of a system. And then I see people like kind of, I don't know. I feel like the NBA intelligentsia has really been like kind of laughing at Pop for letting Danny Green go over the last week. Like Zach Lowe was being like, they never liked Danny Green, and now Danny Green's part of the best two-man combination in the NBA as far as like net rating. And so I've like lost my, I guess, respect for what I thought was a Spurs system. I thought Gary Neal was good because of Popovich. But maybe I don't know. Like maybe, you see Danny Green leave the Spurs and suddenly he's healthy, playing a lot better. I've lost a little of my belief in the, I guess, infallibility of Popovich.
Well, I guess, one of the big things is that they just don't have wings. And that's just, if you don't want to shoot threes, that's great. There are ways to win in the NBA without doing that. It's a lot harder. But you look at the Clippers as one example of a team that just doesn't shoot a ton of threes, and they've been pretty good this year. But if you don't have guys who are, between 6'5" and 6'9", who are athletic and can switch and, guard multiple positions, that's just it's not possible really to win or to have any semblance of a respectable defense. And, you named a few of the guys who they're playing as wings right now that aren't. What's ironic about also what you just said is, Kyle Anderson went from the Spurs to the Grizzlies, and that's a guy who I think they really missed. That was one of their. Well,
that's really funny. So, like when that news broke, I remember I was in Vegas, and people were like, "Are you excited, Keith? The Grizzlies got Kyle Anderson." I'm like, "Well, why wouldn't the Spurs keep him if he was good?" I was terrified because the Spurs did not match. It was a terrible decision for the Grizzlies. Like that was my deciding factor. I'm like, that seems like a fair offer. He seems kind of fun. Like to have on your team, but if the Spurs didn't want a 25-year-old for $9 million a year,